Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody wants to be number one. You know, they don't realize the 23rd person at Google is way more financially savvy and wealthy than your leading entrepreneur in most businesses. Kenneth, if you could actually give one piece of advice for someone looking to start their own business versus operating in a business that's already established, what would you say that would be?
Find your niche. Find your niche. Your niche will always make sure that your passion would supersede any of the challenges that may come.
Hello and welcome to the Prepare to Compete podcast, where we talk all things VA benefits, real estate, entrepreneurship, and more. Kenneth Davis, how you feeling today, my brother?
Oh man, I'm well, blessed, and just enjoying life. Here to give the information to the veterans, right?
Absolutely. Give it to the veterans, man. Thank you for doing that. We in 2024, man, we want to start the year off right and really just continue educating. As you can see, we've been posting quite frequently on this channel as far as giving you a real estate video every Sunday, giving you VA benefits every Tuesday, and now here on this illustrious Thursday, we get into the money with talking about entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Just always want to, make sure the information is always going to push for business, but not only business, but innovation, right? That's what we always want to make sure that we're doing because, many businesses start because of innovation. So at this point in time, being able to give the information to entrepreneurs to continue to create, that's no better way to be, right?
Absolutely. And now it may be hard to actually establish your own business a lot of times, right? And again, there's so much online about being an entrepreneur, but no one really talks about intrapreneurship, right? In a sense of actually going into an established business and really elevating that. And there's so many kind of case studies that we can kind of talk about and discuss regarding that. But for some reason, Kenneth, man, nobody talks about that. We don't get that sauce.
Yeah, man. I think a lot of times as well, I think it's always a network too, right? Your network is always a great way to be an entrepreneur because when you have, entrepreneurs that are building, it's always good to have someone who's an entrepreneur where they can come in to be able to assist and make sure that this organization or business is going to flourish, right? So, but yeah, again, I wish more would speak about that because many of those people are also given shares in the companies, and again, they cash out and they're actually well off. So it's great.
We want to get into some other things that have happened in Las Vegas actually in the past month or so, right? Because we are filming here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and there was a tragedy at University of Las Vegas that happened. That caused some deaths, and our heart goes out to the families that of those individuals.
No, 100%. It's always tough to not only lose someone, right, but being an alumni, it's just a little bit closer to home than normal. So with that being said, my heart goes out to everyone that was affected in that shooting, and also everyone that was affected who were around it. So again, prayers to you.
Absolutely. Prayers to you. And yeah, like you said, it does hit really close to home because obviously we're here in Las Vegas. And even more so, just even the inspiration right behind the Prepare to Compete podcast actually stems from our experience at UNLV, right? And with the business college and different things of that nature. So there's a lot of different things in regards to that.
Yeah. It's terrible, when things like that happen. I know, most talk about it in a format that can spark others and kind of copycat stuff and all this craziness. But all in all, we just want to make sure that everyone is protected and stay prayed up because things are happening in the world, and just make sure that the ones that you are close to and the ones that you do love, make sure you let them know that.
And then we had a very popular entrepreneur, some would kind of classify him as an entrepreneur as well because he was Warren Buffett's right-hand man, which he wasn't particularly an intrapreneur because he was more on the investing side and kind of elevating the business as far as management and other things, which doesn't classify for entrepreneurship, which we're going to totally get into all of that. But, with this investment guru over here, he definitely wants to make sure we give our praises and heartfelt shout outs to Charlie Munger, actually.
Yeah. We lost a great investment community. Lost a great. I think again, just understanding what Charlie Munger stood for, understanding the impact that went through Berkshire Hathaway, and also the impact in Warren Buffett. I know we talk about Warren Buffett so very often as being such a great investor, but everyone needs a team, right? Everyone needs a right hand and a left hand. And if you can't be able to carry both of those, carry the load by yourself, it's always good to have that assistance.
Very wonderful to have that assistance. And that's sort of what we're kind of getting into today. Again, we want to always impart some practical words of wisdom to you guys and really just let you know on your business and entrepreneurship journey where you don't always actually have to establish your own company, right? So when we're talking about the differences between entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship, what is that exactly, right? So when you're talking about entrepreneurship, you're talking about someone that founded a company, right? They went in, bootstrapped it, and go ahead and built that company from the ground up. Now, the intrapreneur is going to be someone that actually elevates that company. Maybe they're a chief engineer or different things like that, and they actually have an innovative idea within an already established company or organization, and they become pretty successful in their own right.
Yeah, true indeed. I think when we talk about that, I think it's really important where we highlight ultimately what innovation is, right? I think a lot of times when we talk about innovation, everyone's thinking of this new technology and different things of that nature. Like, no. Well, innovation of new systems in businesses. A lot of times businesses are insufficient and don't have the correct systems in place. And I think that's where a lot of those entrepreneurs come in play, right? Because you can't watch everything. Everyone has to be in charge somewhere. So understanding who some of the best managers and system managers and developers, that's what's going to elevate the business and scale. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And we're thinking about entrepreneurs. We're usually thinking about software developers or engineers within a company, right? And when we give you guys some practical examples of that, we're thinking about Paul B. In Google, right? Which I say Paul B because it's hard for me to pronounce his last name, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. We'll put his full name on the screen in a photo of him. He actually started Gmail, right? Which most of us all have a Gmail, and he's the 23rd employee at Google, and he innovated that product within there, and now he's millionaire, probably billionaire. Got to check the Forbes list on that, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. Listen, I'm sure he has a lot of shares that was given to him for being the 23rd employee. So a lot of times at that point in time in the organization, distributing capital is just not an option with the journey that you're trying to go. So I'm sure he had a part of those shares there.
Another entrepreneur that we wanted to highlight is Ken K, right? You're Kenneth. This is a whole new Ken here, right? He was the godfather of the PlayStation, right? He actually went into Sony and founded the PlayStation. So, to play your PlayStation on this big screen behind us, right? He actually made that possible for you, right? We're innovating that within Sony. So were they already a very popular and successful company, right? But of course, they made some billions on that PlayStation invention that he had there. And I believe he actually later became CEO for Sony as well. So again, there's a lot of different avenues to move forward in where you actually join a company and you're able to innovate.
Yeah, no, true indeed. Great point. And I think I don't want to skip over that, highlighting that it was already successful in nature, right? But businesses, when we're talking about business is always looking to profit, right? And how can you make more of a profit than you did last year? And that's the continuous nature on how you grow, how you scale, and how you're going to be able to organize your business in a place on making sure that you're able to be lifelong and have longevity and sustainability.
And then the third entrepreneur that I'll actually highlight today is a wild card for you guys, right? Because you may not actually look at this individual as an entrepreneur. You might have thought he was an entrepreneur, but I'll kind of explain it. But we're talking about Steve Jobs, right? Yeah. Because when you really think about it, yeah, he started Apple, but he got kicked out of Apple and he actually came back, right? He came back to an established company and he actually came in with some innovation, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad, right? So he came back with those three different things, and that actually propelled the company for people like Kenneth here to go ahead and invest in Apple and have a lot of success. So Kenneth, how much thanks you got for Steve there for that?
Oh, listen, Apple will always be one of my favorite companies in the world. Outside of Amazon, I don't think there's a more efficient company here. I mean, and that's just looking at the pen to pad and looking at the paper, looking at the documents. It's amazing, man. Steve Jobs is top tier. I can't say much more about it, but in regards to that, when we're talking about him in particular, he has a great mind, right? Being able to have a great mind, it's not only putting your face in the books. It's also creating and having a dream, and also being able to steer a ship with creation and innovation. It's just going to be able to, you'll be able to stamp your name on something that's forever living.
How would you kind of look at the mindset and the skill set and how that would differ between an entrepreneur versus an intrapreneur based on your understanding of the topics?
Well, for myself, again, when we're talking about both, right? Let's look at it holistically. I think both are in affinity to one another, right? They both kind of make sure that each other is in place and making sure that the ship is steering them in the right direction. But when we're talking about specifically an entrepreneur, they're going to develop a way to be able to make capital, okay? Develop a business to make capital. They're not always the best understanding of people, right? Number one, they're not always going to have the best understanding of people. They're not going to have the best understanding of systems. They're not always going to have the best understanding of finances. That's where your team comes into play, right? So having that entrepreneur in each sector of a team will develop a business that can continuously run. And when we're talking about continuously run, we want to eventually be able to run the ship as a business without you, right? And that's a true value of business. But you can't do it without an entrepreneur in place as well.
You definitely can't do that without an entrepreneur. And when you start looking at dynamics, right, of even like yourself and myself, when you kind of look at certain things, I've been a lot more successful as far as in entrepreneurship than entrepreneurship, because we got this big old logo behind us with Veterans for Veterans, right? And when you think about when you actually established this in 2017, man, I actually was looking to do something similar with consulting. And, you kind of stole the idea from me, right, in regards to that. Because, during that time, I was actually working in consulting, essentially in higher education. And I actually wanted to start a company where I did consulting for nurses, right? Individuals that wanted to go into nursing school, because there's so much of barriers when you try to get into an RN program, the GPAs and what schools to apply for, and it costs so much and different things like that. You have nurses moving here to Las Vegas from California and all other places just because it costs so much, right? So I was trying to kind of take advantage of that market in a sense of really establishing that resource. But my skills as an entrepreneur, man, it was like, okay, well, how do I actually get funding for that, right? And how do I actually make money off that idea? Because it's a brilliant idea, but it's just that, right? It's just an idea. And in practice, it's like, well, these people aren't nurses yet. They don't have the money to pay for my services, right? So it's let me go in and look at employers, right? And to see if the HR departments and different things will want to actually embark on that program. It's like, yeah, they kind of do, but it's like, that's such a battle. I'm like, I'm going to hang that up and I'm going to just go ahead and go to this real estate thing, man. I'm going to hang that idea up. So where my entrepreneur idea kind of dissolved, right? Yours actually kind of elevated because you actually continued on that path for veterans, figuring out, okay, veterans need this resource, right? In order to get their disability benefits, how can I actually help and innovate a company to be a solution for that?
Yeah, when we're talking about entrepreneurship, and I'm glad you highlight that when you're talking about an idea is just that, as you mentioned, it's an idea. But when now I understand the passion you have for education, I understand that you have the passion that you have for that demographic, right? Nurses, and healthcare in the healthcare industry, just in general. But a lot of times when we're dealing with when we're dealing with a pathway that you're trying to carve, you run things into red tape, you run things into about funding, you run things about, well, is the product and service is going to be worthwhile? You run into things, well, self-worth in a mental standpoint. There's so many different branches of things that you're going to run into that may or may not put a roadblock or a challenge in there. When we're talking about practical senses and practical things, when I know we say it all the time, right? Get 1% better on a regular basis or every day. Well, I heard one thing that was I thought it was simply brilliant, and it's so simple but so intriguing. If you cannot work on your business outside of work for at least an hour a day, you might as well go ahead and just hang it up. Because when we're talking about an hour a day, that's 60 minutes. Let's really break it down. It's 60 minutes of your time. So if you cannot spend dedicated 60 minutes to develop a dream that you may have, well, your dedication and moving forward in the rest of the business is probably not going to be there. But hopefully you can find again, and be a source as an entrepreneur to be able to assist and develop and brilliantly put innovation inside of an organization that's growing. And now what's going to happen is that you're then going to become one of the pillars of a huge business. So that, again, I mean, when we're talking about this topic, I really love it because most people don't know that they can have that access. And real quick, one more, I do want to hit this point. I watched the show of Shark Tank, and I love Shark Tank. It's a great crowd of people, and I think the investors there are, in general. Mark Cuban, don't leave, man. We love you there. But every time I hear a deal that is necessarily not accepted, but not accepted from the entrepreneur because they want a little bit more skin in the game, a little bit more percentage, or a little bit more financing, or whatever the creative offer is. Well, I see a lot of these businesses, and they're only making $100,000, or they're only making. And I'm not saying that's a lot of money. That's more money than the nation is making. But when we're talking about a business, it needs to be fed every single day. So when you're talking about a business that someone turns down a deal based on 5%, 2%, 3%, and this investor is going to scale this business from $100,000 to $5 million, I just think it's incredible on how you're going to turn that deal down. So yeah, man, I just wanted to kind of highlight that. It just always rings in my head. You're going to take 100% of something that's very minimal rather than taking 30% of something that's huge.
A lot of them are rejecting deals, right, from the Shark Tank entrepreneurs. And they really want them to come in and be an entrepreneur and work in their business, right? Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times Mark Cuban, Damon John, and others, they'll say, well, I need to take this large percentage because you want me to come in and be an employee and re-engineer your whole business model, right? Yeah. So I need a certain percentage for that. So oftentimes, as you're alluding to there, these entrepreneurs actually are not just seeking funding, but they're seeking an entrepreneur to actually come in and help them scale their business.
That's a huge point, man. That's it, because it's not. They're just basically saying I cannot do it myself. So most people are afraid to admit that.
Absolutely.
Most people are afraid to admit that. when you have great guidance, when you have great help, when you have great leadership, please, ego will kill your business. I always understand that. And it will kill most things, right? Family, just utilize that to fuel your self-esteem, but never reject the positiveness of people. So yeah, I think it's great, man.
Great points, great points. So, because when you're looking at the risk reward, right, of actually starting your own business versus joining an established business and really being vital in that, you really have to look at the considerations, right? Whether it's personal, financial, professional, and really what you want your overall outcome to be. So, Kenneth, when we're talking about the veterans community, and we're talking to them about this topic, what type of considerations do you think veterans who are looking and kind of deciding between the two options, right? Like, should I just go and, I have a friend of mine or have someone I could join their company, or I could just do my own thing, right? What type of considerations should they be looking at when they're looking at that decision there?
Well, when you're looking at those type of considerations, always make sure that you've exhausted all avenues first, right? You have tried and put the layers of dedication in something that you're passionate about as well, and then also open arms to other collaboratory ideas, okay? Because some ideas are some of the best ideas, but like I said before, it needs a team, it needs assistance, it needs fuel, meaning financing, right? So if you can always collaborate, I'm always a big proponent of collaboration, because you can get much further with much more people. It may take a little bit longer, but I'm telling you right now, it's going to put you in a position to make sure that longevity happens. So, but taking into consideration, just to answer the question, taking consideration of all aspects of character, financial backing, okay, and most people will frown at that, right? Well, how do you handle your regular life? Because the way you handle your regular life is 9 times out of 10 is going the way you handle a business, right? So having the proper steps in life is always going to reflect inside your business. So with that, take that in consideration, and also what I would consider as well is, how do your teammate or partner that you're partnering with deal with tough times? Because your business is going to have tough times. So taking all those steps in consideration before making that leap into a self-run business itself, and also a collaboratory business, those are things I will always make sure you take in consideration.
When we're talking to our veteran population, another consideration is that when you're looking to get business funding, right, which we have a ton of videos on that, so go ahead and check that out. We had Eddie Chavez on, and he talked a lot about so many different things as far as community banks and certain things. But a point that I wanted to kind of highlight here is that they actually have a certain loan for veterans if you're looking to actually buy a business, right? Mm-hmm. So, when you're thinking about taking on an established business versus starting your own, that's another consideration. What type of funding can you get for your own idea versus a pre-existing idea?
There's so many different resources, not only for veterans, but in Las Vegas, Nevada, they actually just recently opened the VBOC, right? The Veteran Business Outreach Centers. So you can always make sure as veterans to be able to go there to get additional resources for funding, for business plans, for development of strategic action plans in your business. There's so many different assistive nature, because fortunately we want to grow the economy. So that's a lot of resources are going to be involved into that, and a lot of resources are going to be involved into that for veterans. So make sure you're looking at that to be able to create that synergy to make sure your business is going to grow. You have the resources available.
Do not think you're not a success just because you have to go into another person's business, because ultimately they're hiring you to be a resource because you're coming in there to elevate, right? And you could definitely carve your own lane, as we, talked about 3 other entrepreneurs earlier that actually did that, right? They utilized their entrepreneur spirit to do that. So definitely we want to leave you with those thoughts. Continue to prepare to compete. Get 1% better each day. We out. Peace.